All right, winter meetings are over, but still we're following the fallout from all the trades and the big free agents. There still are some pretty big chips out there. And joining me now is Yankees beat writer with NJ.com, Brendan Kuty, and Mets beat writer with the Wall Street Journal, Jared Diamond. Both of you guys, I'll throw this out there. Did you leave the winter meetings feeling like there was something still left on the table before the end of the year for either of these two teams?
For the Yankees, 100%. They still have holes they want to fill in the starting rotation, in the bullpen. Brian Cashman, before he left Nashville, before he left the winter meetings, said that this team is incomplete. He has a lot of work to do. There are weaknesses, and he's got work cut out for him.
Yeah, the Mets are in the same position. John Ricco had the same message leaving Nashville this week, which was, we have more work to do. They still need an outfielder, a center fielder preferably, to play with Juan Lagares out there. The bullpen is still a real question mark. They'll be looking. There's a lot of moves both these teams still need to make.
But amazingly, the big move was actually engineered, and the Mets and the Yankees were right in the middle of it. The Zobrist, Castro ended up being the Walker deal, and the dominoes obviously all fell in the right place. I was a little impressed that the Mets, did they have a plan B waiting to execute and then execute it, or did they just come up with this?
I don't know when they came up with this plan. I know they were interested in Walker from the beginning, Neil Walker from the Pirates. They didn't believe that he'd be available at the price they ended up getting him for at first. That's part of why Ben Zobrist was their first priority. That fell apart. The Yankees played a big role in that. Surprisingly, you don't usually see these two teams affect each other in this way, but the Mets lose out Zobrist to the Cubs. The Yankees then trade for Starlin Castro, and all of a sudden the Mets have to recalibrate everything, and they end up in a pretty good position with Neil Walker. He's a nice player.
And Starlin Castro really kind of fell into the Yankees' lap. This is the guy they tried acquiring at the trade deadline. Cubs said no. This is the guy they tried to get at the GM meetings. Cubs still said no. But they wanted to wait and see if they can get Ben Zobrist. And when it was clear that Ben Zobrist wanted to go to Chicago, Theo Epstein called up Brian Cashman and said, hey, my price just dropped. What can you give me? Yankees were happy to give up Adam Warren, though losing him does hurt the starting rotation and the bullpen because he's such a sturdy swing guy. They really improved at second base for the next few years, and they not only fell into a better second baseman, but fell into a way to kind of screw over the Mets.
Especially considering that this was a roster that we expected them to not really have a whole lot of wiggle room. They were able to improve their roster without giving up Brett Gardner.
Right. Brett Gardner still can be used to acquire some kind of starting pitcher or some kind of a quality middle reliever. You would think more along the younger position player section. You would think more in the starting pitcher. Him along with Andrew Miller could really bring back some kind of substantial haul, or the Yankees can keep him. If the Yankees trade Brett Gardner, that means they have to trust Aaron Hicks, who's unproven in a starting role. If they trade Andrew Miller, that means they need to slot guys down farther into the back of their bullpen. Those guys are also unproven. So they really have to be sure they know what they're getting if they're going to trade a Brett Gardner or Andrew Miller, who are the two biggest names on the Yankees' hot stove right now.
I found that another really interesting thing that kind of came out of these past couple of weeks is the price tag for these premium pitchers. And Jared, you wrote about the price tag for these premium pitchers are now at $30 million a year, or in essence, $1 million per start. But you also wrote about how you feel like that gravy train is going to be coming to an end.
Yeah, I think the first part of this story is teach your children to pitch. You teach your children to pitch, you'll be fine for the rest of your life. $1 million start. And Zach Greinke will probably make even more than that if he stays healthy. He's making, what, $34+ million a year. I mean, these prices are exorbitant. But look, there is evidence to suggest that this could change, or at least not continue to grow at the rate it is now because of the TV cable situation. People are starting to cut the cord. Right now, so much of Major League Baseball revenues are built upon cable TV. The Diamondbacks, they have a $1.5 billion TV deal they just signed in last February. Less than a year later, they're signing Zach Greinke to $206 million. What if one day, could happen, people believe it could, people start cutting the cord, they don't have cable anymore, this pie starts to shrink.
Yeah, and the Yankees, Yes Network was really ahead of the curve. They were the ones that kind of created that whole TV network for a team. But in the past 4 years, they have dropped 80% of their, let me do this again. In the last 4 years, they've dumped 80% of their network. So is this one of the reasons why the Yankees may not have been as active in the offseason in the past 4 years?
It absolutely is, and Yankees fans are still kicking and screaming about it because they look at the Yes Network, they look at the money it costs to go into Yankee Stadium, and they wonder, how do you have a budget? Well, the fact is that Brian Cashman is working with Hal Steinbrenner's budget. Hal is tired of spending. For every dollar the Yankees spend right now, they have to spend another full dollar because they're at this luxury tax penalty level, and Hal's sick of spending all this money and not winning championships. So they have to rework their model. You saw it just the other day when they traded Justin Wilson, a guy who's going to start getting more expensive through the arbitration process. They didn't want to pay a middle reliever, a quality middle reliever, more than they could get out of their rookie level pitchers who are still unproven, but they think that they can develop.
And beyond that, look, we saw what happened in the World Series with Kansas City 2 years in a row. The Mets were in the World Series. What do these teams have in common? They're young, they're athletic, power's down around the game, pitching is at a premium, and that makes being able to manufacture runs valuable, makes speed valuable. The Yankees don't have a lot of that. They have a lot of older players. This is a much younger person's game now. The Yankees know if they're going to win, they have to start shedding these older contracts and get some younger guys in there.
And it feels like those, I don't know, those 7-year contracts for those big pitchers, Sabathia, Verlander, Zito, are starting to look a lot less attractive at the final few years of those deals.
Right, and the fact is younger players are cheaper. And teams are starting to realize younger players are also typically better. At least they perform better in comparison to the value of their contract. So that's what the Yankees are doing. They're going and grabbing a Starlin Castro who's 25, and Aaron Hicks who's 26, and they don't want to pay them the 30, the guys, how much like a guy like Chris Davis would get. $150 million at age 30.
When you sign these big pitcher contracts, though, look, you know they're not going to be great at the end. You don't sign them thinking they will be great in year 6 or 7. You just hope you win a title in years 1 through 3. And look, if you do,
make it worth it for
you're vindicated. If you're the general manager of the team, it's very easy to go back and say, look, yes, we needed to go that extra mile for this guy, but at least we got a title out of it.
There was a belief, though, that the Mets were going to try to buy out the arbitration years of some of their young pitchers, kind of like what they did with Wright and Reyes. But now that these salaries are getting to this $30 million a year, does that make it less likely that they pull this move?
They would still like to. Of course, they know they're sitting on a gold mine right here. They have 5 young starting pitchers who on the open market could be worth $1 billion. $1 billion one day. No team could keep all these guys together, but the Mets would love to try to retain 1, 2 of them, and I do think you'll start seeing those conversations start. It's just, will any of them accept it? I can't imagine Matt Harvey, his agent is Scott Boras, he's accepting 1 cent less or do anything that would prevent him to go into free agency in 2018. So I do think you'll see this conversation. Jacob deGrom is one candidate. I do think you might see the Mets really look to extend because of his age. He's older than the other guys. He's probably the least expensive ultimately on the open market because he's so much older. He's already going into those years past his prime. As good as he's been, he was a late starter. He might be a guy that says, let's lock it up right now when I know I'm still great.
And I think that approach has changed kind of throughout baseball, and maybe we see it no more than the Yankees, who had to change their approach because of finances. They can't do what the Royals or the Mets did, which is blow things up.
Right. In a town like New York, you can't just tear it down. If you're the Yankees, the Mets, you saw they went through some great pains to build this starting staff that they have now. They were able to acquire this kind of talent through a few rough seasons and good draft positioning. The Yankees don't have that luxury. Winning's expected every single year, and you have to rob Peter to pay Paul, and that's, trade some of your quality young guys to get back guys you think have high ceilings and low costs.
All right, we don't have a whole lot of time here, but I'm going to go through these real quickly. Jared, you surprised that Murphy's name has not been out there more?
I think you'll hear it now. Ben Zobrist was the premier infielder on the market. Now that he's gone, some of these second-tier guys will start falling, and he's at the top of that list.
Brendan, the Yankees made it clear they want a premium starting pitcher for Andrew Miller. Are they asking too much?
They're not. Andrew Miller locks down games. Andrew Miller is 30 years old. Andrew Miller's making a reasonable sum of money. They can get a lot for a young starting pitcher who hasn't quite proven themselves yet. But if the Yankees think he's a potential ace, they're going to pull the trigger on it.
Michael Kadire has retired. The Mets are still looking for an outfielder. Are Lagares and Flores still on the table?
I do not think so. The Mets want someone that could complement Juan Lagares in center field, probably through free agency. I think Denard Span's a name that we've heard kicked around. Gerardo Parra is another. The Mets are going to land somebody. They have the money to do it. Michael Kadire's retirement might have freed some of that up as well. So I think you'll see something. I don't think they're going to make a trade. I think they like the depth they have.
Jared Diamond, Brendan Kuty, thank you guys so much for all of your insights. Look forward to doing this again.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime.